right, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out here in Just Be Blessed. My name is Alex Castillejos here in Just Be Blessed, where we share people's testimonies and uplifting messages on how God is good. And let me tell you, today is exciting day. Maybe you guys gonna be like, what are you talking about? Well, I mean, we're alive, right? I mean, thank you, God, for we are alive. I mean, I know a lot of people and a lot is going on in the world. I mean, they're dead or they didn't get up this morning, right? Some disease or something like that. If you're watching this video right now and you're enjoying here and Just Be Blessed here in Facebook Live, but also this video is gonna be on YouTube and our YouTube channel, and I cannot wait just to hang out with brother Rob Decker, and he has really. I know we always say that it's gonna be a blessing testimony, and let me tell you his story. When I was reaching out, researching about his life story, I think it's a huge miracle in his life. And seriously, thank you so much for, like I say, just to hang out and what an awesome thing just to be in social media and share the blessings, right? How God has been good to us. All right, let's welcome brother Rob. How you doing, Rob? Thank you so much for being here and Just Be Blessed.
Well, thank you for having me, Alex. I really appreciate it, man. I really do.
Amen. That's great. So when we always start here in Just Be Blessed, we want to find out, right? I mean, kind of like the background. So the people that are watching us right now, I mean, to come to know the person, right? It's not just like, okay, just tell me your story. That's great.
Right.
Bye. So tell me, do you grow up in a Christian home? I mean, brothers and
No.
sisters. Where?
No, I grew up. So my mom,
Mhm.
my mom had me, and my biological father wasn't around.
Mm.
Really crazy story about you were mentioning about miracles, like
Mm.
my story being a miracle. Well, like I
Mhm.
think that miracle really started with my mom.
Mm.
My mom was told she would never get pregnant, and then she got pregnant, and then she was also encouraged to have an abortion, which she never did, obviously.
Amen.
And so I think just that the inception of my life alone is a miracle. My mom met the man who raised me, who I called dad, when I was 6 months old, and shortly after that, they had my sister. So I have my sister, my dad, who I just recently lost a little bit more than a year ago,
Mm.
and my mom. And we didn't grow up in a Christian home at all. I know that I think there was maybe like some Catholicism that was in the home
Mm.
a little bit, but other than that, it wasn't so much a religious or faith-based upbringing at all.
Okay. So, but I'm sure it was, I mean, you hear the name of Jesus, or something, or Bible, or going to
Yeah,
church,
I
a
mean,
couple times a year.
no, growing up, we didn't really go to church.
Mm.
I know that I think there was some type of, when I was really young, a summer camp or something like
Mhm.
that, where we went to this Catholic church, and I remember us having to stand up and sit down and stand up and sit down, and then
Mhm.
if we did it on point, we
Mhm.
get candies.
Mm.
So yeah, I don't.
Mm.
That's all I remember
Mm.
of that part of faith. But God was brought up in our home, but it was more of like, don't say God's name in vain,
Okay.
or it just wasn't. There was nothing really faith. There was no faith in our home
Mhm.
at all. Yeah.
Okay. So tell us, how was maybe uh teenagers years? Sometimes in those
Okay.
years it can be a little wild. I mean, I don't know. What was your
Yeah. So
experience?
yeah, well, teenage years was pretty much the most transitional, troubling um, time in my life.
Mhm.
When a lot of people were enjoying high school,
Mhm.
I was just surviving.
Mhm.
By the time I was in high school, I probably got suspended 5 or 6, 7 times.
Mm,
Went to juvenile hall a couple times. Had a shotgun pulled out on me.
mm,
I met my biological father when I was in high school,
mm,
and I came home one day from class, excited to meet my biological dad. So, we bypassed a lot of stuff. So by the time I was a teenager, what happened was is my mom and dad's relationship was so dysfunctional
mm,
that they both went their separate ways. And so my mom wanted me to meet my biological father. And then the day that I met my biological father, I walked into the bedroom after school and he was smoking a meth pipe.
mm,
And so, high school, what I saw from, I want to say 15 to 18, a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, a lot of fighting, a lot of dysfunction, which is something that I carried on with me throughout most of my life. And so, I never graduated high school. Eventually, I got my GED.
mm,
I love the sport of baseball, but I got kicked off the team for being a troublemaker. But the reality is,
mhm,
I wasn't going to make the team anyway because I couldn't get grades. I was too busy worrying
mm,
about surviving in high school
mm,
than worrying about getting good grades.
mm,
I was worried about uh, not getting beat up when I got home, or
mhm,
what are we going to eat when I get to the house,
mhm.
or am I going to eat when I get to that? Like, I just had just different stuff that most of my friends weren't exposed to and
Mhm.
didn't have to deal with in high school. So high school was very, very challenging for me.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm sure like I say, growing up and dad is not around. I
Yeah,
mean, what
yeah,
kind of sometimes it's when we have growing up. I mean, if we don't have that the father in the house,
right.
I mean, I know moms always working hard, how to grow up the child, stuff like that. But the main figure, what I'm saying, like
Yeah, male
uh,
figure.
you need to be around. So how was in
Well,
those?
for my dad, you know, he was a hardworking guy, and he worked a lot of 16-hour shifts.
Mm,
So he was there, but he wasn't there.
mm,
And when he was there, he was either sleeping or he was doing his own thing.
crazy.
My house was full of drugs and alcohol.
Mm,
So there was a lot of partying, there's a lot of drug abuse, there was a lot of police coming over on several occasions.
mm,
My dad was there, but he wasn't there. So it was really hard because as a kid,
mhm,
even though he wasn't my biological father, he was my dad.
mm,
And I still wanted my dad. I wanted my
mm,
dad to say that I was doing well. I wanted him to encourage me playing baseball. I wanted
mm.
him to encourage me in school. I wanted to make him proud. I wanted my
Of
dad to
course.
love me.
Yeah.
And that's just not the sense that I ever got from my dad. It was very hard.
Mhm,
I'm a very performance driven person.
mhm,
At least I was for many, many years. And a
mhm.
lot of that's just because I always wanted just to prove to my dad that I was good enough. And that just led into a lot of other mm, poor behavior and dysfunction for me,
Yeah.
you know.
I was watching a video for Seven Clubs, your
The
testimony.
700 Club?
Seven,
Yeah.
yeah, 700 Clubs. You share your testimony there, and
Yeah.
I think it was a huge, blessing to be in that platform and share your testimony. How God has
Right.
been working in your life. Protect
Right.
you and share your story. Um, I remember, like it was saying, you were sharing the very young age you
Yeah.
were start drinking.
Yeah. In high school. So when I was
Hmm.
probably about 15 years old is when I
Yeah.
started drinking.
Mm,
And then shortly after that came the marijuana.
mhm,
After that came the acid and then the shrooms. And so, from the age of 15 on
mhm,
is when my alcoholism and drug abuse really kicked in. And initially, the alcohol and all that stuff, it was fun. Like, I'm not going to lie, like, I'm not encouraging that kind of behavior, but, I had fun with it with my friends and stuff like
mhm,
that. But for me, it was, it was just an escape, man. It was
mhm,
a way for me to get away. It was a way for me to medicate. That's what the drugs and alcohol really started to
Mhm.
do.
Yeah.
And the drugs just got harder. I ended up addicted to cocaine in
Mhm.
my 20s,
Mhm.
and I was doing it, by myself at the house, and my friends weren't there. It was bad, man.
Mhm.
But the drugs and alcohol started at a really young age. Actually,
Yeah.
I remember when I was like maybe in kindergarten, when I went over to a neighbor's house with my dad, and my dad kind of encouraged me to drink some of the beer,
Mhm.
and I remember that,
Mhm.
and that's what happened. That's that was my first experience with beer.
Yeah, and you know what too? It's kind of interesting. I grew up in South Mexico, and they parties and all stuff, right? But I
Yeah,
remember, uh, I was 10 years old or something, and I see one of my family members um, um, giving a little beer to this 2 years old,
yeah,
and they were
yeah, yeah,
saying, "Well, it's just to fall asleep.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
the kid got to sleep." I was like, I mean, that time you don't really think about stuff, but I was like, now it's like, are you kidding me? I mean,
yeah,
come
yeah.
on, you're
Not something
adults,
I would ever
man.
do to my kids. That's not something. But I think that in my house, a lot of that stuff was just normal behavior.
Mm,
And the truth is, I have to take in consideration what my parents came out of. Like, I don't know what they saw and what they were exposed to growing up, which made it okay for them to expose that to me, right?
mm,
Um, and that's something that I had to take into consideration when really looking at my parents for who they were and being able to forgive a lot of the stuff that happened, and
mm.
extend the grace, so that I could develop a relationship with them no matter where they were at.
Yeah.
And so, I took a lot of that stuff into consideration. The older I get, and the closer to God I got, and
Mm,
as healing started to take over, I really had to unpack, what my parents had been through to understand why
mm.
they did what they did,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, which gave me great clarity and understanding, and helped me, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. So I have a question. I
Yeah,
know we're talking about, like, 15 years old, and
yeah,
drugs and this, and your 20s. I mean, you were addicted to cocaine and stuff like that.
yeah.
So when God show up in your life,
Um, that's pretty cool.
or maybe
So
we can go a little before that, something happened, or
yeah, yeah,
it's a
yeah,
good
for
question.
sure, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
see, I see what you're doing, Alex. You want me to jump into the whole CBN video right now, which is cool because yeah, that's definitely huge.
Mhm.
Um, my
Because I
first
remember you had an
experience.
accident. So I don't know
Yeah.
where the accident comes, when God show up, or
Well,
the
here's the thing about that
yeah.
is I always believed that God was with me. I always
Mm,
do. And in all my so when I was really young, when I was in kindergarten,
okay.
5 years old, 6 years old, just turned 6 years old, graduated kindergarten, I came home with a diploma that said that I graduated. That day was the day that I found out my dad wasn't my real dad, and that my sister was my half sister. Um, when I left that conversation with my parents, so my dad's mom, my grandma,
Hmm.
told my dad that I couldn't share their last name because I wasn't one of them. I wasn't blood. Um, and so I needed to change my last name. And I remember this. I remember leaving that conversation and just thinking to myself, it doesn't matter
Mm.
because God is my father, and I'll always be okay.
Oh, beautiful.
And
I mean,
but here's the crazy thing, like, we didn't have that in our home. So for me to be overwhelmed with that and years later to really remember that and for that to resonate with me, I mean, it's pretty powerful
I know.
stuff, right? And so that was my first real, like, God moment,
Ah,
um, leading up to the event that we're about to talk about.
mhm,
So when I was in my late 20s, what happened was is that I was dating a young lady, and we had broken up
mm,
because it was domestic. It was ugly. It wasn't healthy
mhm,
relationship, right? And during that time, she went off and did her thing, and I had a buddy who was always trying to get me to go to Bible studies and
mhm,
church and all this kind of stuff. And at this time, I was selling drugs. I was selling steroids and human growth hormone. I was basically living off of people's couches. I was a full blown drug addict, alcoholic.
Mhm.
I had lost my job, lost my license. I just didn't really have much going for me. And my buddy had invited me to a Bible study. And I said, you know what? I have nothing going for me. Maybe this God thing, this Jesus thing might actually, work.
Mhm.
So I go to this Bible study and we go into this big old room and there's like 12 guys, roughly 12 guys. And they start praying for me. And we're in California. It's like, I want to say, it's sometime maybe in February. So it's pretty nice outside. It's pretty warm.
Mhm.
But we go into this room and it's air conditioned. And I just remember these guys praying over me so that I could receive the Lord. And I start shaking really bad, and I start sweating too. And it's not like I was anxious; I wasn't worried about anything. But looking back on it, what I realized is that something supernatural was going on. And so that day was the day that I received the Lord, even though I didn't really understand
Mhm.
the the multitude of what was going on at that time.
Mhm.
That's when had received the Lord. But shortly after that, I really just jumped back into my old ways. I mean, I was
Mhm.
still drinking, I was still using, I was still going to clubs and bars and all that kind of stuff. It's just now that I implemented the Bible, some prayer, and some fellowship,
Mhm.
hanging out with some brothers in Christ. And
Yeah.
so that's when, I guess you could say that I really received Christ, like me.
Mhm.
But the reality is I really true because God is omnipresent,
Mhm.
omni-knowing.
Mhm.
Like He always knew I was going to come to Him,
Mhm.
right? And so, looking back to when I was a little kid, like He planted that seed when I was little.
Mhm.
He was always with me. So I believe He was always with me. But when I received Him was at that Bible study,
Mhm.
and shortly after that, I found out that this young lady was into some undesirable stuff, and I felt that it was my place to get back into her life and try to pull her out of it. Um, I tried to be Jesus, and I had no business being Jesus.
Mhm.
But I cared, and I didn't want her to go down that path, and so I got back involved with her. And one night, um, after she got back from a trip. So um, she was doing some pretty unsavory stuff. So she was basically getting paid to be with other men.
Mhm.
That was her job. That's what she turned to after we broke up.
Mhm.
And, her and I came to a place where I wanted her out of that stuff. The agreement was when she got back from this trip that she was going to give that stuff up.
Yeah.
Well, while she was on that trip, some really bad stuff happened to her.
Mhm.
And she came to pick me up from my buddy's house, and we stopped off at the liquor store and got some alcohol, went back to her place and got into a conversation. And I left that conversation to go downstairs. What was going on was just too much for me. Just the fact that
Mhm.
some she basically got raped and beaten while she was on this trip,
Mhm.
and I couldn't handle that well. And I think she came home and she came to me hoping that I would be able to, you know, um, just receive her with open arms. And I had such a struggle with it. And so I went downstairs to go shake it all off and get some rest.
Mhm.
And I woke up to a banging at the door, her apartment door. So she lived in a 3-story loft in Northern California.
Mhm.
And I went to go shake it off, man. And and the cops were banging at the door saying, "We know you're in there, open up." And I'm baffled. And she comes downstairs and I ask her what happened. And she she looks at me and she tells me, "I called the cops and said that you raped me and tried to kill me." And
Mhm.
in that moment I was just so broken and betrayed and scared and confused, and my whole life really flashed before my eyes. And in that moment I just I was just like, I just can't live like this anymore. I
Mm,
can't do this. And so I was just like, I'm done.
mm,
And I ran headfirst out of a closed window from a 3-story loft with all intentions of breaking my neck and killing myself. And I ended up clipping an awning on the way down, which changed my fall. And when I hit the ground, I never blacked out, but I hit the ground and I broke my back,
mm.
broke both my arms, and I collapsed my left lung. And so I laid there in a big lump of unmovable flesh. And I remember looking up at that broken window and just asking God why He let me live. Why would you let
Mm,
me live in this situation? I just wanted to be gone.
mm,
And I went to the hospital, 10-hour surgery, woke up in the morning, and detectives came in while I had a back brace, a cast external fixator, tubes coming out of my neck, tubes going in my nose, catheter, the works, man. I was just broken to pieces in the hospital, and the cops came in and arrested me,
mhm.
shackled me to the bed, and
Uh,
threw rape and attempted murder charges on me and $1 million bail. Yeah.
Wow, wow. Okay, we're gonna stop here because I mean I cannot wait to hear the whole back to story about here. Brother Rob Deckers, he is sharing his story, and let me tell you, I mean, just to 20 minutes of the conversation, it's been really rough, growing
Yeah.
up and not knowing the father, and he was not there, and drugs and alcohol and girls, and I mean, but you know what, you guys, God is so good. I cannot wait to hear the whole rest of the story of how God's gonna be restoring, and how restored brother Rob. And let me tell you guys, right now, if you guys watching right now, I know there are people watching right now. Please share this link. I mean, we still in the beginning of the testimony. Uh, I just pray that you guys share this link, because let me tell you right now, brother Rob is talking about, thinking about suicidal thoughts and all this craziness thing about in her life. What is the only solution? I mean, just kill myself, right? But let me tell you, please share this link, because I know if somebody can listen and watching his story, it's gonna be you're gonna be saving a life. Let me tell you. So let's go back to brother Rob, and let's listen the rest of the story. Okay, brother, we're here.
So,
I can
so
imagine.
yeah,
I mean, seriously, I can imagine. And I want to tell you guys, this is a live show. And anything happening in the live show, but we're here just to sit down, hang out, and just a casual, and just tell the story. And we just want to glorify God. And thank you so much, for and open and sharing this more personal stuff. And so you were in the hospital. You didn't do anything, and this is your life is collapsing.
yeah. When they shackle you, I'm shackled to the bed and I'm facing rape and murder charges.
Hmm.
I'm facing never walking again. All these hospital bills, right? Like, there's no future for me. So
Yeah, like,
the only thing I ever had was working out and fitness, but now that was taken away from me because I was broken to pieces.
yeah.
You know, um, but that's where God really started to work.
Mm,
You know, um, when I was laying in that bed, you know, I would just ask the Lord, like, what's going to happen with me? Like, what are we going to do here? I'm here for a reason, obviously. You know, um, I just don't know what any of that is, and you know, I just laid there and I was talking to him, and all of a sudden, I get this overwhelming calmness and this overwhelming peace that comes over me, and
mm,
it's like the lights dimmed and the pain drifted away for a little while, and the sounds of the hospital kind of dissipated, and I just hear this small still voice
mm,
say, the charges will be dropped, your bills will be paid, and you will walk again.
Wow.
And I
Powerful.
don't, yeah. And it's crazy because, to hear something that's clear
Mm.
and positive in that moment, especially with the amount of fear that was going on in my head and doubt and pain medication that was running through my body,
Mm-hmm.
there's no clarity, right?
Mm.
You're not getting any peace or clarity.
Yeah.
And to have something like that happen was absolutely like, you know, so I wake up in the morning and and one of the officers is by the side of my bed, and he tells me that cops are going to come in, or the police department's going to come in, and they're going to drop my charges. Um,
What?
yeah. So part of the story that I just kind of skipped was when I was before that prayer, before I got into that prayer, before I started talking to God that night. What happened was is that there was a police officer sitting at my bed, at my bedside. I was on 24-hour surveillance at this point.
Oh.
I guess I was considered a risk flight. And the cop was just giving me such a hard time, man. And he
Mm.
was browbeating me so bad.
Mm.
And he's reading the police report, and he's telling me how bad of a guy I am because, here I am raping and murdering people allegedly.
Mm.
And I just kind of broke down crying, and I'm just like, that's not something I would ever do.
Mm.
I cared about her. Maybe I didn't do it the right way, but like I, but that's just not. And I start crying, and a nurse comes in to calm me down. So like, we can't have your heart rate elevated,
Mm.
Mr. Decker. And as the nurse leaves,
Mm.
the young lady shows up to the hospital. Like, and the cop looks up, and he's baffled. Like, his whole demeanor changes. He went from like this guy that was totally just, you
Going
know,
crazy.
yeah. And he goes, well, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for her to accuse you of those things, but
Yeah,
they
like what
show.
she's doing here, right?
Yeah, for any reason. She shouldn't be here for any reason
Mm.
whatsoever.
Mm.
And that's the last time I saw her. He escorted her out, and that's the last time. And so then later on is when I start, praying and talking to the Lord, and then all of a sudden I hear what I hear, and so another police officer comes in, and he's just like, hey, they're gonna let you go. They're gonna release you. And so they did. They let me go, and they wished me luck. They wished me healing. It was a different set of cops than the ones that originally arrested
Mm.
me, um, but at that point, I was allowed to see my mom. I wasn't allowed to have guests because I was a prisoner of the state. I was arrested, and so um, I remember when my mom showed up, she was bawling her eyes out. Doctors just told her that it doesn't look good, and I'll probably never walk again. And my mom walked up to me, and with the most sincerest of sentiments and thoughts and love, my mom looked at me, and she was just like, son, I just wish everything ended for you that day.
Mm.
And I knew where she was coming from, man. She loved her son, and she didn't want to see me in the situation I was in. And then my mom had it rough, man. My mom as a kid was raped and beaten, and she ran away from home, and then she was told she'd never have kids, and then she was encouraged to have an abortion, and then she marries my dad, and they have a bad relationship, and there's drugs and alcohol. Like, so my mom for 30 years, 35 years, 40 years, had a rough life herself, and now she sees her oldest kid where he is. And so I received that, what she said, as just a mom that didn't want to hurt and didn't want to see me hurt.
Yeah.
And at that time, the nurses came in and said, hey, Mr. Decker, we're going to try to get you to walk today. And I knew for a fact it wasn't going to happen, man.
Yeah.
But my mom was in the room, and I had to give my mom hope.
Mm.
And I just started thinking about Jesus and the cross and what he did for me. And I started thinking about the movie Passion of Christ. And I remember one of the very first chapters in the Bible I read was Isaiah 53. It's the prophecy of who he was and the coming of him like 500-600 years before he actually did. And I think, with all that, I was like, I'm going to try to get up today. I'm going to try to make this happen. I'm going to try to give my mom some hope. And they got me up, and I couldn't even stand. There's no way. The pain that just ripped through my body, it just felt like I broke my back all over again. And the nurses put medication in the tubes of my neck. And it was just like, it's not happening. And they laid me down, and shortly after that, the surgeon came in and said, we're going to perform another surgery. So that took place. The next surgery took place.
Mm.
I went under the knife for another 10 hours. And after a couple of days of healing, nurse came in and said, hey, we're going to get you to walk today. I said, okay. And I sat up on the side of my bed, and it didn't hurt that much. And I was like, wow, this is good. It got me up on my feet, and I was like, I can stand on my feet without getting medication injected in me. This is good.
Yeah.
And she kind of walked me out into the hallway and said, we're going to walk in this hallway. And at this point, I'm excited because I went from a guy that couldn't move in bed to a guy that was able to sit up in bed and stand on my 2 feet. And my right leg was moving fine. My left leg was dragging. I fell on my left side, so all the nerve damage and brokenness took place on the left side of my body. But I was able to drag my left leg, and I was able to move my right leg. And I ended up running into the wall. I was so excited because I knew I was going to walk again. I knew that I was gonna be okay. I didn't know what the future looked like, but I just know that I was going to be okay.
Mm.
And that was a pretty long process.
For how long you were in the hospital?
I was in the hospital for 6 weeks, and eventually,
That's long.
yeah,
Just
yeah, it
2
was,
nights is just enough.
yeah. And the thing is that they wanted to, because I wasn't insured, you know, it's not a hotel, right? So
Yeah.
they wanted me out, man, because it costs money to take care of people
Yeah.
that aren't insured. And so
Mm.
they did everything in their power to push me out. Like
Mhm.
by week 2, they were trying to get me out of the hospital,
Mm.
and they were trying to everything in their power. And I was just like, hey, I can't, like, I just can't go. Like, I'm just not. And eventually week 6 came around, and my mom took me home.
Mm.
And, it was a great experience. I didn't get to stay at my mom's too long, but what I got to do was I got to know who my mom was as a human being, as a mother,
Mm.
as a woman that went through a lot of trauma.
Mm.
And I got to fall in love with my mom. I got to know who she was, and you know, I was very grateful that she was my mom. That she loved me the way that she did, and that's the only way she knew how, and that was okay with me. But God gave me really great insight of who she was, and then living with her, I got to understand who my dad was because my mom would tell me all about him. And what I realized was that my mom had been through so much stuff, and that my dad had been through so much stuff that they just kind of handed it down to me, and I couldn't be mad at them. I had to forgive them, and I had to give them grace, and understand that, like, they've been through their own trauma, and they've been through their own garbage.
Mm.
And I couldn't blame them anymore. I just couldn't blame them anymore. And that's actually a lot of healing started to take place at that time, because I could now really love my mom and my dad for who they were and all their flaws and all the dysfunction, and understand why they did what they did, and the drugs and the alcohol and the addictions. Like, I got it. I understood it. I got clarity on it. And but that was huge for me because it really encouraged healing
Yeah.
and developing a good relationship with my parents. When my dad died, it hurt my heart to the core. I love my dad with all my heart. No matter what we've been through in this life, to lose my dad the way that I did, I lost my dad to a drug overdose.
Mm.
Just to know that my dad in his 60s couldn't get a hold of the deep-seated trauma and demons that he had, that the drugs took him to the grave.
Mm.
That broke my heart to pieces because I loved him. My mom, on the other hand, she's been sober for a few years now, and she serves the Lord. She loves Jesus, man.
Mm.
But he he had to pull her out of the gutter at like 58 or 15, right? Like, so my mom lived a long life, like, in all that stuff. And
Mm.
and you know with all the healing that took place, like, I ended up having to move from one place to the next
Hmm.
to try to get healing. Eventually, I had to have another back surgery because I wasn't healing. I was just exposed to all the most. I think all these environments I went into, they were people that cared about me, that were helping, that wanted to help, that wanted what was best for me. But a lot of the stuff that was going on in the house didn't allow for healing for my body. So eventually, I had another surgery. I was in a hotel room, and one of my closest friends, my brother, best man at my wedding, his family, like, I was very fortunate that in high school there was a family that saw good in me, um, and they
Man,
just wanted the best for me. And so I'm not going to say my whole life was just like all this chaos and
chaos.
struggle,
Yeah.
but there was good people in my life that wanted me to do well in life,
Man.
and so they pulled me out a few times of some really dark places. My struggles were more of me, my trauma, and wanting to be so close to my family, being close to my dad and my mom, not everyone else's moms and dads, even though I loved being around them. But I wanted my own mom and my own dad,
Mm,
and I wanted to be close to my sister, you know.
yeah.
And those were my struggles, and those are the things that I was trying to bury and cope with. And my buddy Benny, um, invited me into his home, and I think it was only supposed to be for a few nights, and I ended up staying there for a few years as I healed,
Wow.
as I started eating
Amen.
better. Oh yeah, well, I call him Saint Benny.
Mm,
He's just a good dude, man. But
yeah.
he, but that's who their family was. Their
Amen.
family. I lived with their grandma at one point. Like she was a saint. Like these guys, they were just awesome people that really loved me, and I loved them.
Amen. Praise the
And
Lord.
God showed me good people in my life. So,
Mhm.
after all this stuff, I can look back and be like, man, all this great, he still put good people in my life.
Yeah.
Even though I was in my own head and my own struggles, he still put me in my own head. So when I was living at Benny's, when I was living with Benny, um, I started working out again.
Mm,
And I would go see my doctor. My doctor would look at me and like, what's going on with you? Like,
yeah.
you're putting on muscle.
Because
I
I
went
I
from,
remember in your testimony was saying the doctors tell you like no way. I mean you
you're never going to walk again. You're
yeah.
not going to lift weights. You're not going to play sports. Yeah, yeah. They said you'll never lift weights. You'll
Mhm.
never play sports. So what I was told was you'll probably be on medication for the rest of your life due to the severity of the damage in your body.
Yeah.
You'll be able to do things like grocery shop and stuff like that.
That's it.
Yeah, but you're
Wow.
not, but you're not going to be hitting the weights and you're not going to be playing sports
So
like that.
how that decision, I mean you were thinking like, you know what? I mean, I'm not gonna listen to the doctors. I'm gonna keep
Yeah, no.
doing myself. I mean,
Well, I was always a pretty rebellious dude anyway. I mean, it's like
yeah.
tell me I'm not going to do something, I'm going to go do it, right?
Yeah.
But I think it was bigger than that. It was bigger than me being a rebel and
Hmm.
Mr. Tough Guy. It was more of I had purpose.
Hmm.
I was here for a reason,
Hmm.
and I really believe that like it was the power of God that would get me up every single morning,
Hmm.
no matter how much pain I was in. I would get up out of that bed, I'd put my feet on that floor, I'd stand up, and I would walk. I'd put one foot in front of the other. And there was a lot of crime, there was a lot of pain
Hmm.
that was involved with many of those mornings because most of those nights were sleepless. I couldn't sleep well. I was so medicated, um, and in so much pain all the time for years. But I believe that I had purpose. And, I really, God put on my heart that I was going to go out into this world and I was going to share
Hmm.
the troubles that I had in this life to help other people.
And that time you were going to church or
Yeah.
it
So
was
I was going to a church. I
okay.
was going to a church. I was hanging out with some Christian brothers. I was reading the Bible. I was reading scriptures. I was praying every single day.
I can
Um,
imagine. Yeah, of course. With that
yeah.
pain.
Yeah. Well, I think that a lot of times, like, God's strong in our weakness, right?
Amen.
And the only thing I ever was like, you know, I was strong physically. I was a strong physical man, but that was taken away from me the day I broke my back. So I was left with nothing. And the reality is that I needed to be broken on the outside because I was depending on that so much. I was depending on what I looked like, um, concerning the world and its ways, putting on that show, making it look like there was nothing wrong when I was
Mm,
dying inside always. It's crazy because I thought about suicide so much in my whole life.
mm,
um, I just had a really good way of masking it. I was always pretty like witty and stuff like that, and so I was cracking jokes, and I was always friendly with everybody, and I
mm,
always wanted to be everybody's friend. But all that stuff really was a mask. It was really a mask, and so in my process of healing,
mm,
I think I know God wanted to work on me
mm.
from the inside out.
Yeah.
And eventually, like, I got my body back, I got the physical stuff back. I'm a certified personal fitness coach,
Yeah. We're gonna
you
talk
know.
about that later too.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very
But,
interesting.
and I play softball. I play center field for my softball team. Like, I
Mhm,
move like a guy that never
mhm,
broke his back. The guys I play with are 10, 15 years younger than me, and
mhm.
and that's all blessings from the Lord.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was all part of my process, is just like getting up out of bed every morning and just trying to move, and eventually getting back into the gym and lifting weights. And, my doctor would look at me like, "Ew, what are you doing?" Right? Because when I broke my back, I was 215 pounds, solid muscle.
Mm.
In
Oh,
3 weeks in the hospital, I was 165. So my body lost 50 pounds of muscle in three
wow.
weeks. I
Wow.
went from this like healthy looking, strong guy
Yeah.
to this bones,
Mm,
and
mhm.
so I was going to my doctor's appointments, and my doctor looked at me. He's like, "What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, you're getting muscular, you're getting big."
Yeah.
And eventually I started getting off all the pain medication because I didn't need it as much anymore, because I was eating better, and I was working out, and and eventually I had to go get a job. Here's the deal. I'm not going to live off disability for the rest of my life. Like, God doesn't want me living off disability. Like, I'm not there to live off the government's money, but now you have to go out into this world and you have to go get a job, because in that job is when you're going to start sharing God's love with people.
Yeah.
And that's what he called me to do. And so I ended up
Mm,
getting a job at this brand new gym, and I met a young lady at that gym. Her job was to come train with me and report to my boss. Um, Basically assess the type of personal trainer I was, because I was pretty much a personal trainer all my life up to the point I broke my back.
yeah.
And so I went back into the working place, and my job was this: like, I'm going to become a personal trainer. I'm going to get one-on-one relationships and in front of people, so that I can share my story, and I
Mhm.
can help people with their stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'm back personal training again, and I'm just going to fast forward on this part, but I married her and we have two beautiful kids.
Okay.
So that worked out really well. That
All
worked.
right. So people's gonna be like, okay, come on, finish
Okay.
up. I
So
want to
God,
find out.
so God's like, oh, I'm gonna throw you a major bone here. So he
Okay.
threw me but shortly after that, we both lost our jobs at that gym. So it
Mm,
was kind of like, that's what that job was
mhm.
for us to meet.
To meet.
But I'll say this: I was still struggling with the alcohol. I was still struggling with my past. I was still struggling with what I did. I was still struggling with some trauma and emotional um, stuff. And you know, I I got behind the wheel of a car one day,
Mhm.
and I totaled that car because I was drinking, and I ran from the scene of the crime,
Mhm.
and I pled with God, and I just asked God, I need you to bail me out of this situation, because here was my reality in that moment. Not only did God allow me to survive what I survived, but He got me off the pain medication. I'm working out every day. I have a great job. Um, I met this great young woman. Things are really good. Like, I still had it better than most people at this point in my life, and I'm throwing away because of alcohol, because I still needed to medicate, because I wasn't leaning on him for stuff. I was leaning on alcohol to numb some of my stuff. And I asked him if he bailed me out of that situation, if he would just do that for me. I would move to Southern California, because I was living in Northern California with my girlfriend,
Mhm.
my wife.
Yeah.
But she just graduated college. she wanted to go back home to Southern California to be with her family. So I was like, Lord, if you bail me out, I'll quit my awesome job. I'll move to Southern California with Alyssa. I'll marry her. If this is your will for my life, I'll marry her, and I'll never touch the bottle again. I'll never drink again. And long story short, man, he bailed me out on a whole different level. And the reality is, if I went deeper into that story,
Yeah.
all the opportunities I had to get in trouble that night, leading up to the time I turned myself in, it was all God. It was all God. It was only by His grace and His goodness that, like, we're good. And so what happened is I ended up moving to Southern California, and Alyssa and I get married, and we end up taking a trip out to Colorado for our honeymoon, and we fell in love with this place. And so we told ourselves, like, hey, in a couple years we'll have all this stuff paid off. We'll have a kid, we'll pay off the car, we'll pay off a lot of debt, we'll move out to Colorado. And that's pretty much what happened. We got out here about 18 months ago. And what I realized, when I came out here to Colorado, I was just like, what a beautiful place to live. It wasn't as congested as California. And I just, my wife said, we're supposed to be here. So I said, okay, well, if that's what God puts on your heart, well, then we're moving. And so we did. But when I got here, I realized something different. Yes, I'm supposed to be here, but it's for greater reasons than just buying a house and raising a family. Colorado Springs, this area, has a very high suicide rate amongst young men, very high. Per capita, it's one of the highest in the United States.
Wow.
You have your drug and alcohol problems here. And I just realized, like, God wanted me to start my ministry here in Colorado Springs. So my ministry starts with my fitness business, because fitness and I always had a relationship. And if you understand anything about your walk with God, it's definitely a journey. You go ups and downs. And that's how fitness can be. And, fitness is a journey as well. And you learn a lot about yourself when you train. There's times where you can go all out, and there's times you have to scale back, and then there's times where you have to adjust. And that's how it is. That's how it's been with my walk with God. And so, my faith and my fitness kind of run hand in hand. And so I use, the fitness as an avenue or a tool to help improve the life of other people. Plus the impact, the positive impact that it has on the human mind to help get rid of depression and anxiety and stuff like that. But, fitness can be very spiritual for me. And I'm just grateful to have it back. I'm grateful that I went from a guy who was never supposed to walk again, or was told I was never going to walk again, to a guy that does what he does, and so, so that's what we're doing now. Like, we just had our daughter Gianna, 6 months ago, and she's a huge blessing. And I'm working toward a ministry here right now as we speak. The state of Colorado is running a background check on me so that I can start working and mentoring with young men, so I can go into that realm. Okay. And so, I'm still working with fitness, and I'm working toward working with mentoring young men. And next month I will be going into a local prison. You can call it local. It's about an hour or two out, but a prison to go share my story with the inmates. So, Amen. I have a heart for those people that are locked up. I could have easily been locked up. I was facing rape and murder charges. I mean, how many times do you hear real stories about guys who are locked up for things that they really didn't do? It comes out years later that the evidence shows that. So I could have easily been in prison. Yeah. And I know this, like, a lot of those guys in prison are there because they had childhoods like mine. And a bunch of them are just a bunch of little boys in grown man bodies that didn't know how to deal with trauma and emotions. And, I just want to connect with those men, and I want those men to have hope. I know that, outside in this free world, a lot of us are locked up in our own heads. I know I was locked up in my own head for years.
Mm.
And, you know, I hear wonderful stories about some of these guys in prison who have Christ in their life and they're free as can be, but they're behind bars, you know, and to be able to communicate with those guys
Mhm.
and to get to know those guys and,
Yeah.
um, you know, I think it's going to be a wonderful experience. So I'm very excited for what God has in store as far as my own ministry, my fitness business,
Yeah.
what He's trying to create, the people that He's connecting me with. Because ultimately, what it is the love of God that lives inside of me and wanting to give that to other people because of all the things that He's done for me.
Mhm.
um, I can easily look at my life. We can look at the things that have happened to us, but what about the things that we didn't get in trouble for, or we didn't get caught for, or you know, that,
Yeah.
um, you know, there's a lot of those too, man.
Oh yeah,
You know,
a lot, a lot.
there's a
And let
lot
me
of
tell
those.
you, maybe maybe you answer already this question I'm
Yeah,
gonna be asking you, but I have to ask you
yeah.
how God changed your life.
Um, well, you know, I know real love now.
Mm.
You know, God is a God that transforms. That's what he wants. He doesn't. It's not about human behavior. It's not about changing your behavior. It's about this real supernatural deep transformation that takes place inside you to where behavior just automatically starts to change. Um, and it's all about that transformation when you really live and love God, live for God, and you love God. You know, it's this amazing transformation. And, you know, if you really look at Jesus and what he did on that cross and why he did it, that's the ultimate definition of love. And, you know, I have to constantly remind myself. I know that when Christ was on the cross, you know, he was even like, Father, forgive them for what they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Forgive them for what they not know, or
Hmm.
you know what they're but he's saying, like, even extend love to those that are crucifying me right now,
Yeah.
that are laughing at me, mocking at me, spitting at me, stabbing me. Like, he's showing you the ultimate sacrifice and what true love really is all about. And so, you know, to really look at the cross and look at Jesus,
Hmm.
you know, that's, to me, that's the greatest love story ever told. And
Yeah,
and
for sure.
you know, just the things that he was exposed to because he loved me so much. And so
Mm.
being able to look at the father as a father, you know, a lot of times I think what people struggle with is we all have worldly fathers, right? And they're all flawed, right? And they have a hard time understanding that there's a father that really loves you because they don't understand why bad things happen. Well, you know, there's a lot of crummy stuff in this life, but
Mm.
you know, your perspective changes, your attitude changes when you realize that you were created for a purpose and that you are truly loved. And that's what the gospel does for me. And that's what God does for me, is it helps me understand that I'm truly loved. I'm here for a purpose,
Mm.
and now I need to extend that to others that were broken just like me and need that as well.
Okay. Well, let me tell you guys watching right now, brother Rob Daker's sharing his testimony, and he had a huge accident, broke his back and everything. The doctor said, you know what, you're gonna be able to walk or do exercise, go to the gym, anything like that. But let me tell you, I have a video that I want to share with you guys. That's right. We're gonna be sharing, and I'm going to share with him right now, right there. I found out some video here in YouTube, and I'm not gonna be playing the whole thing, and it's gonna be just silent. So I just want to share with you guys uh, what he can do. I mean, I mean, he's in the gym, and we were talking about that he was in the gym and all stuff. So I'm gonna play maybe I don't know, maybe like 30 seconds in this video I found on YouTube, and I'm gonna play it over here, and I'm gonna show it here. No, right here. This,
Ah,
yeah. So
nice.
that's right. So uh, just watch you guys. What he was sharing with us, that he gonna be able. The doctors was telling that he's not gonna be able to do any exercise or anything, We're gonna show you guys 30 seconds. Right there. Share with us. Look at it. The doctor say he cannot be able to do that, and that's
Yeah.
right. I mean, it's just power of God, right?
Yeah.
Amen. That's right. It's great. So let me tell you guys, God is good, right?
Yeah. God is great, bro.
God is great. And I didn't ask you for permission for this to show.
It's okay. You know that, you know what that is.
Yeah,
So I tried to get on American Ninja Warrior because you know how much they love their stories, man.
yeah. I was watching, but I was like, well, I don't have permission. I don't know if I'm gonna
Yeah,
share.
you're
So
good. You're good.
okay.
I do all sorts of crazy stuff in my gym, but yeah, that was actually supposed to be a submission video for American Ninja Warrior
So what
because
happened? No.
they just never accepted me. They
Hmm.
never called me back, and then last year, my buddy Richard and I did like a team video that we submitted to American Ninja Warrior. Now he's like a ninja warrior, bro. Um, for me, it was more, trying to use it as a platform to share my story, to
Hmm.
encourage and give hope to others.
Yeah.
And that was my hope. I mean, of course I want to compete because I'm a competitor, but
Yeah.
you know what, the most important thing with my life
Hmm.
is that I share it with others
Hmm.
with the hopes that it gives them hope. And so,
Yeah.
hey, American Ninja Warrior, that just wasn't part of God's plan, and I'm
Yeah.
okay with that. But there's still really cool things to come. But yeah, that's what that was. That was the submission video.
Yeah. And let me tell you guys, uh, right now, brother Rob has a ministry, and you can go. I'm gonna share uh, the website, right? You can
Yeah,
They can
yeah.
go check it out and tell us, please, how where what we can find in this website.
So yeah, so I have a website called robdeckerspeaks.com. I put a lot of like the podcasts and stuff on there. That's most of my testimony.
Okay.
And I was in a book, so there's a chapter in a book there. I give it to people for free, like you don't have to go buy it.
Mm.
There's articles on there that I've been in. You have access to my social media there. There's also like a sub page of Kingdom Fit. Um, so yeah, there's where you can fill out paperwork, or you fill something out on the website if you want me to come speak at your church.
Okay. All right.
And then if you're local, there's Kingdom Fit where if you want to hire me as your trainer, you can go on there and all that kind of stuff. So
Okay.
you can email me from this, even if you just want to like ask me questions, or if there's comments. I'm very good at returning responses,
All right.
especially if someone's really going through it hard.
Of course.
A lot of times people are just like, you know what, thank you for, your honesty and transparency and being
Mhm.
vulnerable in a day and age where
Yeah.
men don't do that stuff.
Hmm.
And they're just very grateful
Hmm.
that I share my story.
Yeah.
And
So I just want to encourage you guys watching right now. I mean, please go to brother Rob Decker website, and just to know, come to know him more deeply, and they have podcasts and all stuff, sharing testimony and stuff like that, and also in a book, right? You were saying about.
yeah, so there's a chapter on there's a book, and
Okay.
I have a chapter in the book, but that
Okay.
chapter is actually on the website. We're
Okay.
actually working on
Mhm.
another book, and then that book, um, I have a friend
Mhm.
who's out there in LA who produces and directs and wants to write
Mhm.
and produce and direct my life story,
Mhm. Amen.
turn a movie into it, and just
Mhm.
the power of God
Amen.
and what salvation looks like in somebody's life. And so, another book is on its way, like a whole book of just, what we've talked about is scratching the surface, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just more stuff, and then eventually leading into hopefully like a documentary or a small movie
Right.
for people to get the visual.
Yeah, we need to pray for that. If you guys watching this, let's pray for brother Rob Decker for his story and to share with a big
Yeah.
platform, because I know people's gonna be blessed and it's gonna be changing their lives. And please invite him to your church. You're looking for a motivated speaker. Uh, Share this, his life and how God changed his life. And praise the Lord. And please uh, go to the website, check out some stuff, and invite him to your church or a youth rally, stuff like that. It's gonna be people's gonna be blessed totally. I have a question.
Yeah.
And two more questions to finish this
Yeah. Yeah.
this show. And please share with us your favorite verse in the Bible or quote or something
So,
that help you to
yeah.
motivate you.
So, when it was getting back into shape, when it was getting back into just getting on my feet, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me,
Amen.
was my go-to. That was definitely my go-to, because I needed that. I needed to be strong in Him. Now, I think Hosea 4:6 is probably my favorite. One of my favorites is "My people die for lack of knowledge."
Wow,
I
powerful.
think, yeah, I think when you live in a culture of broken Christianity, churches that aren't preaching the gospel, and we're learning from these people, television, movies, music, there's propaganda, there's
Mm,
politics, there's so much misinformation out there. And the problem is people receive it, eat it up, regurgitate it, and they're not doing their due diligence and doing their own studying and their
mhm.
own research.
Yeah.
And that's just something that's powerful for me. I think that um, the enemy's tricky, and he's very
Deceiver.
wily in his ways, right? The reality is if you look at Adam and Eve, like even the trickery that took on place there, he didn't even really need to convince them of who he was,
Yeah.
right? He just needed you
Mm.
to get your eyes off of God
Yeah.
and to turn on God. Like that's all he needed. I saw, what was that movie with Kevin Spacey, the Reservoir Dogs, when he says something along the lines like the greatest trick the devil ever conceived was convincing people that he didn't exist.
Hmm.
And just having knowledge of these things, having knowledge that he does exist, that he is around, that he is like a ravagous lion trying to kill, steal, and destroy. Like, um, I think there's power in that knowledge. Like many years ago, the Lord pressed on my heart to know thy enemy. And so I started studying the occult and understanding more about the occult. And basically, it's just the flip side of Christianity. It's just the very polar opposite of Christianity. And, I can see in this day and age with the things that I hear and the things that I see, you see those things because I was given the knowledge, because I went and researched it myself.
Mm.
And I don't want to die for lack of knowledge. I
Mm.
want to be well informed. Um,
And sometimes truth hurts, sometimes,
yeah.
when we start learning and, even in the word of God, kind of like,
Well, it can be scary, bro. I'll share this with you.
sure.
Early on in my walk, I really started getting so heavy into studying the occult that I wasn't praying as much and that I wasn't
Mhm.
getting into the word as much.
Like a new age stuff or,
Dude, I mean, that's a whole nother episode of the
and let me
stuff that
tell
we
you
could talk
guys,
about.
yeah, let me tell you guys, on this month, on the 23rd, a sister, she's going to be sharing her story, how she came out from the deception of the new age.
Yeah.
So she's gonna be here in Just Be Blessed sharing her testimony on the 23rd.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
There's a guy named Stephen Bankars. If
Oh,
you ever get a chance to check out that dude, same stuff. Like
I
he
sent a
does
message. He
interviews.
haven't answered me back.
Oh, really? Stephen Bankars is pretty. Well, I think that a lot of people now that his story's really out there, that he's,
Yeah,
people, everybody wants him on the show and talk to
yeah,
him. But that guy's pretty amazing. I watched
hmm
a lot of his stuff.
yeah. Me too.
He does stuff with Michael Heiser, who's an
Mhm.
amazing like theologian, and
Mhm.
but yeah. But anyways, I
Yeah,
started getting so deep into this occult stuff that um, I was
start praying.
being heavily attacked, bro. We'll just say I was being heavily attacked.
Mhm.
It scared the life out of me, the stuff that was happening to me because
Do
I
you
was so, because,
experience?
huh?
Do you experience something like
Yeah,
something
being,
moving or showing
oh,
up or?
being pinned to the bed, um, Satan being whispered in my ear, like, just uh, the visual stuff that I saw, these beings that look like humans, but they'd have like pointy noses. It was just all this. It was just this dark, deep spiritual stuff. Um, it was pretty. It was scary stuff. It was just a lot. But so I got so deep into that stuff that it's a rabbit hole, man. It never stops. The occult, the darkness, the
Yeah.
devil, hell, the pit of it. It's an abyss, and it never stops. And so I had to stop. I had to stop studying that stuff for a while and just focus back on Christ and my walk with Him,
Mhm.
and getting back in the Word, and things like got cool again. But
Yeah.
yeah, it got into a pretty dark place, man. But I just feel like the Lord
Mhm.
always wants us to be on top of things
Head,
and
no
really
tail.
paying attention.
Mhm. Yeah,
You
that's
know,
right. That's right. Thank you so much for sharing that because it's true.
yeah,
Sometimes we can, research that kind of stuff, but we need to make sure that we are enter in the enemy territory, and
yeah,
we need to
and that's what you're
pray.
doing. It's a full-on battle, man. It's a real war that goes on there, and um, if God hasn't given you permission to do that,
Hmm.
if He's not walking with you in that,
Hmm.
you're just setting yourself up.
Yeah, yeah, um, yeah. We can share that more stuff like that, and yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's
We can have
that's
another
for another. Hey,
conversation, a couple
if
more
you want to
hours.
do this again, we could do that again some other time. We can
That's
we
right,
can talk.
right? Yeah, we can talk
Yeah,
about
we can
that.
talk about this
Totally.
stuff.
We maybe we can invite you once again to just be
Yeah,
let's share just specific with that,
yeah.
your
I mean,
experience.
I have some pretty interesting experiences. My journey with Christ
Mhm.
has been about 13 years now,
Mhm.
and a lot has happened.
Yeah.
So I have plenty to talk about.
Yeah, totally.
But so hey, so my people die for lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
Hosea 4:6.
Okay.
That was the long version of the question you just asked.
Well, praise the Lord. Thanks so much for sharing.
Yeah, for sure.
And let me tell you, there are a couple people here. They just share some comments,
Yeah.
and Noah Ills is just say hi. She says say
Huh?
hi, and Sister Anna, she shares some comments. Says seems like a completely hopeless situation. You were talking about
Yeah.
your story, but sometimes it takes us to be completely broken. Sometimes even literally
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
us to experience God
Yeah.
and have Him touch our lives so
Right.
powerfully. Uh, Thank you for sharing your testimony. She says.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm like one of God's hard-headed kids, and the reality is that I learned things the hard way, and I had to learn it the hard way. But the
Mhm.
truth is because of everything that I experienced, it gave me a close relationship to Him that I could trust Him. Um, so I never regret, like, none of it do I regret.
Mhm.
Um, I'm glad I experienced everything in this life that I've experienced, because now I get to share it with others and give them hope and encouragement. So thank you,
Okay.
Anna.
Yeah. Yeah. Anna.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sister Anna here right here. And your final thoughts about your testimony. I know since the
About
beginning.
my testimony?
Yeah, your testimony. Your final thoughts about today. You what you were sharing.
Well, Honestly, it's still being told, man, and my testimony is still growing because my ministry is still growing.
Amen. Amen.
The reality is that ministry for me really started the moment my foot clipped that awning and changed my fall. Because that's what really changed my life. Is when my fall changed coming out of that window, I survived it, and from that point on is when ministry really started. And right now, what's going on is God's just taking me from one place to the next place to the next place, and the testimony is never going to stop, because even though I won't today, I don't have that same testimony. Like, that's my testimony that happened in the past. That testimony can help people.
Mhm.
With every season in life is going to be a new testimony that I can share with somebody that's going to resonate with somebody or impact somebody.
Amen.
As long as you continue to live for him, he's going to continue to show you and teach you things. And so, even the trials and tribulations of leaving my home state and starting a family in an unknown place and walking away from a job right before my daughter was born to start my own business, to start my own ministry, like, there's testimony and all that kind of
Mm.
stuff.
Amen.
There's a lot of people that are afraid to take a step toward living their passions because they're afraid. They walk in fear. And it takes a leap of faith to do some of those things, but that leap of faith takes trusting in God.
Mhm.
And, that's where we're at. We 2 months before my daughter was born, God urged me to quit my job and go with Kingdom Fit. Now you're going to be training out of your home, and now you're going to be starting a ministry, and I want you doing this. And, a lot of times we work for money to pay our bills.
Mhm.
Well, there's seasons where I don't have money, man,
Mhm.
but I'm trusting the Lord to show up.
Amen.
And
Amen.
it's all in his time, on his calendar, on his schedule.
That's true.
And that's how it works, because in a moment, in a snap of the fingers,
Mhm.
everything can change.
That's right.
I think,
Be faithful until the end, right?
yeah, and I think because I was such a survivor my whole life. Like, I get into these modes of, like, I got to take care of it. Like, I got to do this. It's all me. But the reality is, it's like, no, I got a loving father that's going to help take care of me,
Yeah,
and
Lord.
so the testimony is going to keep going, man.
Okay.
And, a year from now, I know I'm going to be on the show again,
Mhm.
and we're going to talk about the ministry and all these young men that are being helped, and even the things that I can't even speak of now, because that's how God rolls, right? Because
Mhm. Mhm.
he starts throwing stuff at you that you never thought you were going to do and,
Yeah.
and partake in, and that's just what he does, man. And I think that's the beautiful thing about walking with him, is that
Mhm.
you can create your own life in your head and try to create whatever you want, but at the end of the day, like, when you're walking in his truth and his ways, like, he's going to make some really cool stuff happen for you.
Amen.
And I look forward to those things.
Yeah.
I really look forward to those, and I look forward to having more testimony for you.
Amen. All right. Well, once again, thank you so much for being here and Just Be Blessed to
Yeah,
share
man.
your story. And please, you guys, I want you guys to go to the brothers Rob Decker website. Once again, I'm gonna show it. So please take advantage and just be blessed, right? I mean, just go over there. RobDeckerSpeaks.com.
Correct. RobDeckerSpeaks.com. Yes.
All right, that's right. Okay, don't hang up. I'm gonna finish this video. Okay.
Oh, you're good. I'm hanging out.
Okay, I just want to tell you guys that this coming Saturday at 12 p.m. Pacific time, we're gonna be having a real special guest, a good friend, a good brother. Maybe you see him before on YouTube. His name is Greg Serreta.
Oh, no.
Really great.
Box. Yeah.
Yeah, he's gonna be here live, and he lives in Poland. That's right, Europe. And so that's why we have this schedule, because it's like 9 hours ahead. So please save that date, because brother Greg is gonna be sharing his testimony, very powerful testimony. And please be here and just be blessed. Don't forget. And thank you so much for just being here. And remember, this video is gonna be uploaded next week in our YouTube channel. That's right, Just Be Blessed. And if you haven't subscribed and stuff like that, our testimonies, they're gonna be uploaded in our YouTube channel. Thanks so much for being here. Hang out with me and listen powerful testimonies with Brother Rob. And please check out his website and have a good night. Thanks so much. My name is Alex Castillejos here in Just Be Blessed, where we share people's testimonies and have left messages on how God is good. Thanks so much and have a good night. Bye-bye.